Hi, and thank you for tuning into this video. The last post I made here on YouTube is an interview with my friend Jordan Lozada, who is somebody I knew in the Nithyananda Cult. And little did we know at the time when both of us were members of that unfortunate, fraudulent organization, the Nithyananda Cult, we were both being sexually exploited by the fraud who calls himself Nithyananda, who was leading that cult. He and I are both people who were drawn to that mystical, spiritual Hindu organization because we wanted to make the world a better place. It's interesting, in that interview with Jordan, which has kind of sparked this little video where I want to answer a few of the questions some of you left beneath that video, we really went straight into the things that he felt were red flags that led to his exit of the organization. Being sexually abused by the leader, witnessing the instruction given for kids to get beaten. He actually even saw one of the adults beating a child, which is far worse than the things I personally witnessed, although I've had kids tell me about getting beaten. I think as more and more survivors of the Nithyananda cult start coming forward and publicly sharing what they experienced, it's only a matter of time before that fraudulent guru Rajashekaran gets arrested. Now, a little update since the last time I made a video specifically about the cult is that there is now an Interpol Blue Corner notice issued against that fraud. While this is a really good sign and a good step forward towards justice, the lives of people who have started cults in the past, like L. Ron Hubbard, who started Scientology, don't really give me much hope for actually seeing justice served to this criminal. I wouldn't be surprised if Rajashekaran, the fraud who calls himself Nithyananda, tries to follow in the footsteps of Hubbard by, for example, sailing some ship out into international waters where he can't get nabbed and starting his own orange-painted version of Scientology's Sea Org. Anyhow, what I really want to talk about in this video is to clear up some of the things people have been speculating about and asking me about. So first and foremost, not some of you, I would say a very few people were kind of critical towards Jordan online during the months in which, since the time he was falsely accused by the cult of drug smuggling until very recently, he has stayed fairly out of the conversation about this cult organization. A lot of people really unfairly criticized him for that and told him that, if he was victimized, it is his duty, his obligation, his responsibility to come forward and share what happened to him. I really think this is something problematic about the social media society we're living in right now, because as far as I'm concerned, anybody who has been victimized, somebody who has been sexually molested, sexually abused, manipulated, brainwashed, mentally treated terribly, even physically treated terribly. He mentioned in the last video that he has a slipped disc and has suffered the consequences of the grueling physical manual labor that he was forced to endure in that cult. Somebody like him, and like myself just a year and a half ago, before I would have even thought of going public about the trauma I experienced in the Nithyananda cult, people who are cult survivors, their first and foremost priority should be getting their lives back together, finding gainful employment, reconnecting with family and friends who might have been ostracized during the brainwash time, deprogramming, letting go of all the fear-based mind control that had kept them locked into a nefarious system for so long. I find it really disgusting that people were shaming Jordan for his silence when those individuals don't know even a fraction of the shit this guy had to deal with in his life, thanks to his good-natured decision to join an organization that he thought was going to benefit the world. And I also think it's really annoying that so many people comment on our videos saying that we are the problem, that those of us who had been brainwashed into the Nithyananda cult, who, spoke highly of our fraud, who we thought was a guru back then, telling us that all of the crimes committed by that cult and all the people who got sucked into that cult, it's because of us. In reality, the monster who dresses up in a saffron cloth calling himself a Hindu sannyasi and then fucking around with his disciples claiming that he's Krishna and they're his gopis, or that he's Shiva and they're his Devi, he is the one who created that entire cult situation. While it's true that people who believed in him, like myself, recruited others into it, it is not true that we did so deliberately to cause harm to their lives. We had no personal gain from it. Another question I've gotten a lot since talking out against the Nithyananda cult is people are asking how much money I was paid during my time there. In fact, as embarrassing as this is, not only did I not get paid anything for the years of service I gave to that cult, in fact, I wasted thousands of dollars of my own money. $6,000 for one inner awakening, $11,000 for Sadashivoham, countless thousands for plane tickets back and forth from Canada to India. The only time that cult ever paid for my plane tickets is if I was traveling to serve the cult agenda. For example, during one of the programs that happened in Phuket, Thailand, my plane ticket was paid to and from Thailand from Bangalore, from where we had our main campus. But it wasn't a pleasure trip. It wasn't a holiday. I was spending 15 to 18 hours a day working for that organization, writing hourly reports to tell them what I was doing. It's really hard to describe to somebody who hasn't been in that cult what life is like in it, because quite frankly, it's something that can't be compared to anything in the Western world. Typically, those of us living in the West, whether it's Canada or the US or England or Australia, we have our personal time, our family life, maybe the time we spend with friends, and then we have jobs. And our job might be 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day on a really stressful work day. We might work 5 days a week. Some people might have 2 jobs where they're working 8-hour shift at one and a 4-hour shift at the other. But at the end of the workday, you get to go home. You can complain about your boss and say, what an asshole, he yelled at me today for something that wasn't my fault. When you're in a cult, you live at work. You don't have an 8-hour shift or a 10-hour shift. You don't even have the luxury of a 12-hour shift. You are on call 24/7. And at the end of the day, you can't complain about your boss because you're deluded into believing your boss is God. The other thing, all the stuff that people do in cults that looks batshit crazy to others, or that is batshit crazy, to be honest, those things aren't things that people in a cult would naturally do if they weren't under the undue influence of the cult. For example, when people who have escaped the Nithyananda cult talk about worshiping the guru's feet, it's not like any of us would have naturally woken up one morning in our lives and thought, wow, that crazy dude with the beard who claims he's Sadashiva and who yells at people and who says he's in bliss, but he's really just bitching and complaining all the time. I think I'm gonna get some really expensive perfume and just pour it on his feet, because why not? It's not something that we would naturally do. It's something that we are conditioned to do. We're groomed to do. We are told by a group of people who have mastered, under their own duress, the best possible systematic way to peer pressure people into doing anything. And we have been brought to a space where we feel like the only way we can succeed in life is if we do what the group is doing. I really recommend people who have been watching my videos about the Nithyananda Cult, or who watch Leah Remini's series, Scientology and the Aftermath, or who just find cults fascinating. Before judging the victims of a cult, do a little bit of research. Read Steve Hassan's book, or check out the work of Yanya Lalich. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your names. I don't know how to pronounce them properly. I've only read them. But there are experts in cult psychology and cult dynamics who have really done some beautiful work explaining how that mind control works, and how the systematic abuse and manipulation can turn otherwise rational, intelligent people into subservient, mind-controlled minions of a nefarious cult leader. So those who were criticizing Jordan for not speaking out sooner, you have to understand how bloody brave it is for a straight guy to admit that he gave a hand job to another man who he wasn't even attracted to. He's not bisexual. Imagine the levels of mind control he was under in that cult if he went along with that cult leader's sexual agenda. You know, it's not, I think that Jordan speaking out is the greatest evidence needed for people to understand there was heavy brainwashing going on. You know, if it was just females speaking out, unfortunately, a lot of critics have commented that we went there because we wanted to be abused, which is bullshit. Nobody joins a cult because they want to be abused. You know, nobody takes a vow of celibacy because they want to be the sexual plaything of the leader who initiates them into it. I took those vows because I believed in Hinduism. And I mean, that brings us to another one of my frequently asked questions I want to give an answer to. People ask if I still believe in Hinduism. And I still believe Sanatana Dharma is the most beautiful philosophy on the planet for getting to understand your inner space and coming to a clear oneness with the universe. I think the Vedic mantras are the most empowering verses poetically written in any language. Sanskrit is such a fascinating, beautiful language. I remember hearing in one of Rajiv Malhotra's discourses that Sanskrit is the only language perfect enough for computer programming that it leaves no room for error when commands are given. I wouldn't say that I believe in Hinduism the way somebody might have a faith-based belief in a Judeo-Christian or Islamic religion. I would never put my livelihood into somebody else's hands ever again, or trust somebody else to tell me how to live my life. I've kind of become skeptical in the sense that I'll follow what I feel is best in any given moment before I would listen to somebody else's opinion about what's best. And yet, if I had to pick a religion, it would be Sanatana Dharma. Not as a disciple of a guru, but more as a spiritual path that's been outlined by ancient rishis and munis to discover the inner guru. And what's interesting is that I've seen a lot of people who have survived the Nithyananda cult having kind of a similar feeling. There's a reason we got recruited into that cult instead of another cult. There's a cult like Scientology that's more intellectually based and kind of steeped in what they would call like a mental technology for excellence. Whereas the Nithyananda cult is steeped in Hindu ritual and deity worship and temples, the temple-driven civilization. There are certain people who are drawn to those things naturally. And unfortunately, those of us who are drawn to those things naturally got exploited by that. We were told what it means. We were told what we have to do. We were told what our lives are for. As far as I'm concerned, the true spiritual path, you shouldn't be given answers. You should be encouraged to ask questions and to discover those answers for yourself. In the Nithyananda cult, questioning was forbidden. And here's the real mindfuck that fraud of a guru puts on his disciples. he'll go on stage and give a discourse saying questioning is everything. Pure seeking is your ultimate responsibility. Don't do anything unless you're allowed to ask questions. Question your leaders, question this, question that. And then behind the scenes, anybody who questioned his authority or who questioned his instructions was disciplined, was sent to a branch campus and forced to fight with the locals who were upset that the cult was grabbing their land. Or they'd be sent to this slave labor camp called Sacred Arts University, which is just a pretty name for a very disgusting place. It's unfortunate that he was so contradictory, but yet the people who wanted to believe in him chose to find loopholes to let him get by abusing them. And that's what I still see happening to those brainwashed in the cult. Jordan gave some really beautiful call-outs to people who are still following that fraud guru, people who he and I personally knew in the cult, like Jillian Doak and Jordan Kremer, who people know as Drida and Prasida, or the blissful athlete and Kundalini Yogini. These are not people I consider enemies. These are people who I really hope will wake up and get their lives back, because they're capable of doing so much. They're capable of enjoying themselves. I can imagine the way they feel about this whole cult exposure must be pretty shitty. Believing in the fraud guru Nithyananda is a high pressure thing. He makes you feel like anything that goes wrong is your fault because you didn't hold a big enough space for him, or because you had some kind of an incompletion. His being on the run with a blue corner notice from Interpol and criminal charges filed against other people who were following his criminal instructions, he would never say, yeah, I fucked up. I shouldn't have kidnapped Janardhan's daughters. I shouldn't have sexually abused kids. I shouldn't have sexually exploited disciples. I shouldn't have grabbed money and then laundered it overseas. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. He would never admit that any of the wrongdoings are his fault. Instead, he'll tell his brainwashed disciples, if you held a bigger space, this wouldn't be happening. And so he allows the cycle of criminality to go on and go on. And instead of his brainwashed disciples waking up and saying, wait a minute, he says you cause your reality. So if he really was Sadashiva, why would he cause the reality of himself being a criminal on the run? No, instead they'll say, well, his space is a pure open inner space and he's desireless, and so whatever is happening to him, we've created it. He has made them accept abuse and feel like they deserve to be abused. It's a cunning, manipulative behavior. And like I said, anybody who watches these videos for entertainment, you should do a little research into cults and hear what the experts have to say. And if you have a friend or a relative who is brainwashed in the Nithyananda cult, please do whatever you can to help that person come out of that mental trap. It's not that they enjoy what they're doing. It's not that they love to alienate people or to worship a criminal. It's that they have been conditioned and groomed to believe that they have to. They think if they don't do that, they will reincarnate as a lower life form and never get enlightened. The same kind of psychological bullshit that's put on people in any cult has been put on them, and they desperately need help. So the main message I want to give in this video is to please not judge the people who are abused by the cult. I've also had people say, why am I not speaking out against Mahayoga? One of the fraud's disciples, who he gave the name Mahayogini Manitya Mahayogananda. I've seen a lot of people say she's the ultimate criminal, she's the biggest fraud, she does these fake magic tricks on stage. While that may be true, she herself is a victim of cult brainwashing. I've spent enough time with her during my time brainwashed in the cult to know that she does not have a negative agenda to exploit people. I have seen her sick in bed for days because she was pushed to the breaking point conducting sessions that the fraud himself was supposed to conduct, that he put on her last minute, even though she was actually in very poor health. I have seen him yell at her while she was literally bleeding because of one of the cystic ovarian syndrome. Pardon me, I don't know the exact name of the disease, but she suffered with ovarian cysts that had put her in the hospital when she first found the cult leader. And we need to have compassion for people who he exploits. In the last video, Jordan mentioned watching Sri Pranapriya beating kids, and his wife, Ma Pranapriya, who was put in jail for kidnapping, which was under Nithyananda's instruction. These are not terrible people doing terrible things. These are good people brainwashed by a criminal to carry out his criminal agenda for him. So if you do have friends or family in the Nithyananda cult, help them get out of it. If you've been watching these videos and judging from, the privacy of your own home, I mean, that's your right. What am I saying? Like the world we're living in, where so many people go on social media and share themselves, of course it's up to you to judge it or relate to it or empathize for it or pity it, like whatever you feel about this. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. But please also extend a little bit of understanding and a little bit of sympathy. And try to think back to a time in your life, maybe when you were in school, and you were peer pressured into doing something that felt wrong, but then you were praised by your peers for doing it, so you felt like maybe it's the right thing to do. I mean, everybody knows a group of kids who bullied another kid, and one person within that group might have felt a bit guilty and thought, well, geez, we shouldn't be teasing this kid, we shouldn't be making fun of this kid, but their peers pressure them to do it. I think a lot of the crimes being committed now by brainwashed members of the Nithyananda cult fall into that category. It's like extreme peer pressure in a system where even the teacher is instigating the riotous kind of a behavior. So thank you for hearing my little rant about this. The next video I upload on my channel is going to be something more personally of interest to me. You might have noticed the new posters I've got in the background here. I've got like the ultimate crystal gemstone nerds interior decor scheme going with these crystal posters. So my next video series is going to be all about my favorite gemstones and why I like to work with them and what they're known to do spiritually. Even today I'm wearing one of the necklaces from my shop, something I recently uploaded with some druzy blue lace agate and a tassel I made by beading some aquamarine gems. You can find that in my shop called The Art of Gems on Etsy. I'll put the link in the video description. And the reason I chose to wear this necklace of all the pieces of jewelry I've made is that these are all stones said to enhance the throat chakra and to enable clear speaking. There's a reason why I spent about 3 months not making any YouTube videos, and that's because, quite frankly, I didn't know what to say. I shared all the horrible things I experienced in the Nithyananda cult. I interviewed the friends of mine who wanted to share their experiences with the cult. And then after that, I just wanted to get back to my life, rebuild my shop, reconnect with my family, furnish an apartment that had stayed empty for a long time because I was so distracted by exposing this cult. When I had a thought of making a video, I would go, what more can I say that I haven't already said? And so it was important for me to wear a piece of jewelry made out of stones that represent clear speaking and that are said to enhance communication ability, because I don't want to ghost everybody. I don't want to kind of disappear from social media. I felt like you guys have the right to answers to the questions you post under my videos, and it's nice to be able to express those in a way where I feel comfortable in what I've said, and hopefully you feel satisfied in the answer. But if you don't feel satisfied in the answer, well, sorry. Sorry, not sorry. You are welcome to post more questions below this video. I'll try to do a Q&A every once in a while. And, you know, some people had mentioned that Jordan didn't give the full story of what happened to him, or that somebody was curious about how he got from, you know, a casual disciple attending a program to sitting on Nithyananda's bed, giving him an oil massage. I also agree it would be kind of good to fill in that blank of how he got from just a disciple to a sex abuse survivor. So Jordan has very graciously agreed to do another video interview with me. And if you have any questions for him that you'd like me to ask in that video, you're welcome to post those below here, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer. Anyhow, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.